And for me, what I love about this movie is it's a movie that is not trying to moralize. It's not trying to like tip the scales back. I mean, we do need to do a lot of scale tipping in terms of how horribly stereotyped and misrepresented Indigenous folks are. But this is just a story that was clearly important for this director to tell.
Hey everybody, we're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Kristen.
I'm Dr. Erin.
You are exceptionally welcome to our conversation about the film Wild Indian, which Dr. Erin is going to unpack and summarize for us now.
Yes, I am. This is a part of our Indigenous Peoples Awareness Week coverage, 2021. What? We made it up. It's Native American Heritage Month, for those of you that didn't know or didn't watch our lengthy Indigenous Peoples 101 video from yesterday. But if you watched any of our Colonizers World Tour, you know that we did a 101 video and a piece of art. And this piece of art came out in September, and we thought, hey, why not? Let's check it out. It is for rent in the United States on Amazon Prime for $5. And summarizing this briefly is interesting. It is the story of two young men and then men, Makwa and Tedo, growing up on an unnamed reservation in an unnamed part of the country till the end of the movie. We later learn it's Wisconsin. So we get the first half of the movie. They are young boys in school. They are cousins. They don't live such happy lives. Makwa in particular is abused physically and emotionally by his parents, who are absent and alcoholics. And he has some conflicting thoughts about a neighbor boy who apparently has a better life than him, appears to be. And Makwa one day shoots him with Tedo's gun and kills him. And this is the moment that kind of both of their lives split into different paths from that trauma. We catch up with them in adulthood. Makwa is now Michael and is married to a very thin Kate Bosworth, a white lady, and you can tell very emotionally stunted from his previous life. He is both an Indian, but also covering up a lot of his Indigenous heritage. He's changed his name to Michael, but he still has Indigenous art in his house. He's a fascinating folk. We also meet Tedo as he is being released from jail, where he has been in and out of since probably the day that Makwa shot their neighbor, and has had a very different experience. And so the rest of the movie is about Tedo's journey to reconcile with what they did, to find Makwa and confront him for what they did. And it doesn't end well for Tedo. Or Makwa, ostensibly, although that is unclear.
For anyone in this movie. Nothing ends well for anyone in this movie.
'Tis true. Yeah. So we don't want to give away too much more about it, but it's framed as a Cain and Abel story. There's early on in the film, the two boys are attending mass, and the Catholic priest is telling the story of Cain and Abel. And you are led to believe this is a modern Indigenous retelling of this story. And yeah, it's not for me. And then Dr. Kristen has more to say about that for her. I got a lot out of it. I don't think it was... Yeah, it's not my kind of filming, cinematography, storytelling. It was really interesting, and I will never watch it again. Dr. Kristen.
For me, these stories are best told through books. me personally, because I need to have the inner life. Like, I really appreciate being inside of people's heads, and that's of course one of the things that movies can very rarely give us without a fairly cheesy voiceover in some ways. And in terms of understanding motivations and people's kind of I prefer books, just flat out do. And so to me, this was a poorer version of The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, which I just adored, about two black siblings, one who is white passing and one who isn't, and where their stories converge. It's a lot less murder in The Vanishing Half, a lot less murder, but a lot of murder. I felt a lot more connected. It could be the women thing, it could be, but I think it was the written word. I felt a lot more connected to the story in Vanishing Half than I did to this. The cinematography is not for me, all those kind of things, but I do want to say that I really love that I feel the freedom to say I hated this thing. Because there's a burgeoning Indigenous art scene. This story is completely not about being Indigenous at all, at the same time that it is about being Indigenous. It's more than anything else, it's about generational trauma, and the specific generational trauma that is fraught upon men in particular, I believe. Great stuff. Again, I just would have preferred this as a book so that I could explore a little bit more in my imagination, rather than and the connection to their personhoods, rather than having to stare at another camera shot I don't care about. But again, we are less visual people in our storytelling, and I am even less so than Dr. Aaron.
Yeah, so I liked a lot of the cinematography independent of the storytelling, because I'm a very much a visual art consumer in that way, more so than Kristen is. But I think for me that it was too incongruous between the two. Should be said, Michael Grey Eyes.
Performances.
He's in lots of things. Most recently, you would have seen him in Rutherford Falls. Is phenomenal. I don't know how he holds that kind of complexity in his person, but that I was just blown away. And I actually really liked the actor who played Teto as well. I mean, I thought it was a lot easier to identify with him emotionally.
Fair.
But I think that was the point, because I don't think any of us were supposed to identify emotionally with Makwa.
Correct.
But yeah, the acting was really subtle, I think, in a lot of ways, maybe too subtle at sometimes. But I think for me, it's yeah, and we've read a couple reviews, and we'll link them in the show notes below, that talk about, who this movie was made for and what the purpose of this movie is. And it is not, as we are seeing a lot more Indigenous made and produced art getting a larger platform. A long tradition, especially in the last 30 years, of Indigenous filmmaking, but this is a big platform for an Indigenous film, in what I have jokingly dubbed the Waititi effect on the television and film industry. And for me, what I love about this movie is it's a movie that is not trying to moralize. It's not trying to tip the scales back. I mean, we do need to do a lot of scale tipping in terms of how horribly stereotyped and misrepresented Indigenous folks are. But this is just a story that was clearly important for this director to tell. It's not told from the perspective of trying to make white people feel bad for colonization. White people aren't really in the story, aside from the odd white person that is portrayed as not understanding life on the reservation, or being really culturally awkward around Indigenous folks, with Jesse Eisenberg was born to be that kind of awkward white man.
Oh my God. He just is. And he helped produce this movie, so he's another one. He enters into our Brad Pitt category of signal boosting stories that aren't theirs, which I really appreciated.
Yeah, so it's not about changing the narrative about Indian folks. It's not about moralizing against white folks. It's just a story of humans who've been through trauma. And as Dr. Kristen said, it is both specifically Indian and not Indian as it goes through the storytelling. And I think Makwa's character is, impacted by this generational trauma, but I also think he might be a sociopath. So, it can be a both and. But for me, I think that's what we got to at the end of this. We were like, you know what? It's not really for me, but that's awesome. Because if people just get to make movies and tell their stories, sometimes I'm going to like them and sometimes I'm not. And it doesn't have to be a tick box exercise of representation either. It can be an artist telling his story through his perspective, which I think is what this film is. And for that, I love it.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of the reviews said, especially Matt Zoller-Seitz writing for RogerEbert.com really made that point a lot, that this is an incredibly important film because it's not for a point. In a way that a lot of other things are. Even Reservation Dogs is for a point. There is, and Rutherford Falls is for a point. They wanted to show that Native people could be funny. This is entirely just natives happen to be humans too. And life sucks, and people are sociopaths, and this is a piece of the tapestry of humanity. Yeah. But yeah, if you're a middle distance person, if you love a movie that stares into the middle distance, this may be your jam, man. It's a real well-constructed mystery. Like, the pacing is good on that. When I read, read a couple reviews from aficionados of this genre, it's evidently an excellently executed one. Fantastic. Not my jam. But we are always going to watch things that aren't our jam because we're hoping we're going to find something that maybe expands it a little bit. We haven't necessarily found a whole lot, although we have added Bollywood to our love. And we love the freedom of the internet to be able to consume these things. So thanks for that still happening. And if you're interested in sitting in a meditation of trauma for an hour and a half, this one's a really good one.
Yeah, I agree. And that is a wrap on our Colonizers special edition Colonizers World Tour.
Beep, 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 beep.
Beep for Indigenous Peoples Awareness Week that we have named it. With the hopes that if you watch any of our content this week, you will then make an effort to intentionally be aware of Indigenous peoples all the time. Or at least every week, not all the time. That's impossible. But like once a week would be better than a lot of us, myself included, are doing. Tomorrow on the YouTubes, we'll be coming to you with a fantastic discussion about what we need to know about Thanksgiving, what we don't know about Thanksgiving, and how we can still celebrate the holiday while being honest about its origins.
If you like these conversations, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to always so that you don't miss a single one. We also have a special edition of Welcome to My World this week with an Indigenous playwright who founded the Spider-Woman Company. It's an incredible conversation that I got to have, and you definitely want to make sure that you catch it. And all the rest of our coverage of not only North American Indigenous folks, but Indigenous folks around the world as we begin research to pick back up Colonizers World Tour in March of 2022. Hopefully we'll see you before then, for sure. Take care, everybody.
Bye.